Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bhagwan Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bhagwan Hari Yashodanandana Brajadanandana Yashodanandana Brajadanandana Jamuna Tera Vansari Jamuna Tera Vansari Radha Madhava Sandhya Jaya Radha Madhava Sandhya Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bharadhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bharadhari Yashodanandana Brajadanandana Yashodanandana Brajadanandana Jamuna Tera Vansari Jamuna Tera Vansari Jaya Radha Madhava Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Radha, Madhura, Radha, Jai Jayam Vishupad Paramahamsa Pri Vrajagacharya Stotra Satta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhagavan Charanarvind Bhakti Vedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Skandagiti Founder Acharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Samavata Bhakti Vrinda Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jaini Thai Gauda Pimanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and to Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmiritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Jita Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagradatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Divishakam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Saptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutididi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansakalpatilvyasya Kripa Sindhu Bevasya Pasitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Ram Shaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayana Rishi, Supreme Human Being, unto Mother Saraswati, the Goddess of Learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayasabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatirtamashloke Bhaktir Bhaviti Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamitam Uttamaśloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Anyam Swastaya Namaha. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, is the king of all Vedic literatures. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, Sridham Vyasadeva. It is the literary incarnation of God, compiled by the literary incarnation of God, Sridham Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Mukam karoti vasanam pangum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Yat kripa tamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our morning Bhagavatam class. No Bengali book, Bangla. You can ask later. So we are continuing Canto number 7. Chapter 13, and today we are looking at text 24. Trishnaya Bhava Vahinya Yogyai Kamair Apuryaya Karmani Karyamano Aham Nana Yunishu Yojitaha Krishnaya Bhava Vahinya Yogyai Kamair Apuryaya Karmani Karmani Karyamanoham Nana Yunishu Yojinata Krishnaya Bhava Vahinya Yogyai Kamair Apuryaya Karmani Karyamano Ham Nana Yonishu Yojitaha Krishnaya Bhava Vahinya Yogyai Kamair Apuryaya Karmani Karma Karyamanoham Nana Yonishu Yojitaha. Krishnaya, because of material desires, Bhava Vahinya, under the sway of the material laws of nature, Yogyai, as it is befitting. Kamai, by material desire. Apuryaya, without end, one after another. Karmani, activities. Karyamanaha, constantly being compelled to perform. Aham, I. Nana Yonishu, in various forms of life. Yojitaha, engage in the struggle for existence. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Sridham Prabhupada Ki. As long as a living entity wants to fulfill various types of material desire, he most continuously he must continuously change from one body to accept another. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that as a small piece of grass falls in the river and is tossed about with different types of wood and tree branches, living entity floats in the ocean of material existence and is dashed and tossed amidst material conditions. This is called the struggle for existence. One kind of fruitive activity causes the living being to take one form of body, and because of actions performed in this body, another body is created. We must therefore stop these material activities. And the chance to do so is given in the human form of life. Specifically, one energy to act specifically, our energy to act should be engaged in the service of the Lord. For then, materialist activities, materialistic activities will automatically stop. One must fulfill one's desires by surrendering unto the Supreme Lord, for He knows how to fulfill them. Even though one may have material desires, one should therefore engage in the devotional service of the Lord. That will purify one's struggle for existence. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi trivrena bhakti yogena yajita paramam purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desires, without any material desires, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship Supreme Abode, the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. This is from Bhagavad Gita 2.3.10. Another verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anyabilashita shunyam jnana karmadi anabritam anukulyena krishnanu chilanam bhaktir uttama. One should render transcendental service, loving service, to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. This is called pure devotional service. From the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11. Just reading the verse again here. Because of insatiable material desires, I was being carried away by the waves of material nature's laws, and thus I was engaging in different activities, struggling for existence in various forms of life. So this is the beginning discussion between this saintly person and Prahlad Maharaj, somewhere in South India. This meeting took place, this exchange and discussion between these two exalted personalities. Prahlad Maharaj, a few days back we were reading, immediately could understand the high level of consciousness of that person and began to glorify him, to praise him, and was eager to hear from him. And this is in the early beginning of this sage's sharing his realizations about this material world, and how he took some very definite, concrete decisions to stop what is called the hard struggle for existence. Mana shastrani indriyani prakriti stani karsati. The word karsati is translated in the Bhagavad Gita as hard struggle. Our hard struggle for all living entities in the material world is due to our being subjugated by our indriya, senses and our mind, due to our mind being attracted and engaged to material activities. So that means that the living entity, all living entities, that is also there in the lower species also. They're also struggling, isn't it? I mean, if we analyze the life of different animals, different insects, they are, of course, living out their karma, and they have no choice. They have to live out this karmic reaction, but they are struggling, similar to those who are in the human form of life. And this struggle for existence, we will come to know from these discussions, this realization that is being shared here by the great sadhu, how to end this hard struggle for existence. And this is the nature of the material world. Even though everyone is struggling, one generally comes to the conclusion that, well, this is the way it is. This is life. There's no choice. We have to just do the best that we can. But actually, Bhagavad Gita teaches us differently. In the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling that to Arjuna, that if one is cultivating this knowledge of the Absolute, then one can actually, if one is associating more and more his consciousness, his senses, his activities with the transcendental nature, the one or two verses that are very nicely explaining this point, then one eventually develops that same nature. Where is it? Yeah. Yes. That is text number 20 from the 14th chapter. Gunanetan atityatrin dehi deha samudbhavan janmamritu jara dukkair vimukto mritam asnute. When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. So it is like this personality whom Prahlad Maharaj is meeting, although he is in the material world, still having a material body, he's completely his features were described as being bright-faced. Prabhupada used to share one short discussion he had with a priest in America. This priest was telling, Prabhupada used to meet so many people. So this one particular priest was telling these boys and girls, they are our boys and girls. They're coming from a Christian background, actually. And but they are so bright faced. Previously, they had no interest whatsoever in coming to the church, but now they are bright faced. Now they are very enthusiastic. So this is the Prabhupada, of course, would explain that yes, because they have come in contact with, they've taken up seriously the process of transcendence, because they are on a regular basis, on the daily basis, cultivating this practice of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, they're they are becoming enlivened. They are becoming enlivened in Krishna consciousness. So this verse we are reading a few minutes ago is the whole chapter, for that matter, is explaining how our problem is our association with these modes of material nature. And as long as one is identifying with this body, then this miserable condition will continue. In the purport, Prabhupada is he's quoting from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, giving the example of a small piece of grass that falls in a river and is tossed about without different types, with different types of wood and tree branches. So similarly, the living entity is tossed about, floating in the ocean of material existence, and is dashed and tossed amidst material conditions. One must therefore stop these material activities, and the chance to do it is given in the human form of life. And of course, Prabhupada quotes this very nice verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Akama sarva kamova moksha kama udadadi tivrena bhakti yogena yajita purusham param. So why is it that even seemingly even devotees who take up to Krishna consciousness seem to struggle? Is it that everyone is struggling or some are not struggling? Huh? As long as one is in the material world, one has to face so many obstacles, but the actual what is called struggle for existence will come to an end when one is actually transcending these modes of material nature, which is not at all easy, but that is what is being conveyed here. So this was achieved by this particular sadhu, saintly person, that he explains actually in the next few verses. We can just read about his personal experience. So this is text, the following text. Yadrishtaya lokam imam prapita karmabhir brahman swarga pavar goyor andvaram tirascham punar asyacha. In the course of the evolutionary process, which is caused by fruitive activities due to undesirable material sense gratification, I have received this human form of life, which can lead to the heavenly planets, to liberation, to the lower species, or to rebirth among human beings. Then Prabhupada gives a purport to this verse. All living entities within this material world are undergoing the cycle of birth and death according to the laws of nature. This struggle of birth and death in different species may be called the evolutionary process, but in the Western world it has been wrongly explained. What is the theory of evolution in the West? Ape. Man comes from monkey, from ape. That is called Darwin's theory. Darwin's theory of evolution from animal to man is incomplete. Prabhupada actually mentions that not only Darwin, but other personalities, either scientists or writers, sometimes came in contact with the Vedic teachings and they kind of took away or stole some theory and adjusted or built on that, so to speak. So there is an evolutionary process, but the way it is understood by this particular individual, Darwin, is incomplete, as Prabhupada mentions here. It is incomplete because the theory does not present the reverse condition, namely evolution from man to animal. Interesting. Yeah. So therefore, one of our devotees, Dhruta Karma Prabhu, very intelligent individual, who's done a lot of research. So usually people talk about evolution, but here Prabhupada is talking about the reverse. So he wrote a book called Devolution. devolution, that not only we go up, but from, let's say, this human form of life, which is considered compared to animal life a higher level, but on this higher level we can come down. So I was hearing recently how yeah, in the early days when they were opening the temple in London, in England, in the early days when devotees were there, and oh, okay, this was yes, maybe some short time after that, after the devotees came in contact with the Beatles. So I believe it was Hansadutta, who was at that time one of the early devotees who had spent some time at the Montreal temple. And one time he came to know that one of the Beatles was in Montreal, John Lennon, who later on actually was assassinated. So John Lennon had, he knew, of course, the devotees, and he contacted them. He told them, you come and bring all the devotees, we're going to have a special program. He was staying in some big hotel or something. And he made some record, I think, Give Peace a Chance. It was very famous. And the devotees had been called to to be part of that. So the devotees, wherever we go, we bring prasadam. So they went to the place and they started to distribute prasadam. And there was one quite famous singer also who was, because John Lennon had called so many different well-known artists at that time to be part of this album that he was making. So one devotee came up to this very famous, I forget his name, and told him that person didn't know about Krishna consciousness. So he told him, here is some prasadam. What is that? So this is sanctified food. If you take this, so he put it in his hand, if you take this food, you don't have to take birth again in a lower species. He threw away the food. He says, I want to take birth as a dog. In my next life, I want to take birth as a dog. Means people, Prabhupada would explain that people are so covered in ignorance that they're actually giving different excuses or explanations that, oh, it's okay if I become a dog, I'll forget about everything. And dogs in the Western countries, they have very nice living arrangement. Not like most dogs, like in India, what we call stray dogs or street dogs. People, they take great care of their dogs. They buy life insurance for their dogs. They have a special, when their dogs die, they have a special burial ceremony for their dogs. Yeah, their dog is like, anyways. So some people have this mentality that what is the problem even if I become a dog? Because they are lacking completely in basic Krishna conscious understanding. So this point was being made here of devolution. And that happens, of course, when people are not taking advantage of this human form of life. So the this nice point that Prabhupada is making in the purport. Darwin's theory of evolution from animal to man, from the monkey to the human being, is incomplete because the theory does not present the reverse condition, namely evolution from man to animal. In this verse, however, evolution has been very well explained on the strength of Vedic authority. Human life, which is obtained in the course of the evolutionary process, is a chance for elevation, svarga, pavarga, or for degradation, tirashcham punar asyacha. If one uses this human form of life properly, he can elevate himself to the higher planetary systems, where material happiness is 1,000 times is many thousands of times better than on this planet. Or one may cultivate knowledge by which to become free from the evolutionary process and be reinstated in one's original spiritual life. This is called apavarga, or liberation. Yeah, Prabhupada gave a whole, I think he elaborates in this purport about this word apavarga. You might have heard Prabhupada's lecture on this. Material life is called pavarga because here we are subject to 5 different states of suffering, represented by the letters pa, fa, ba, bha, and ma. Pa means parishram, very hard labor. Ha means fena, or foam from the mouth. For example, sometimes we see a horse foaming at the mouth with heavy load labor. Ba means vyartata, disappointment. In spite of so much hard labor, at the end we find disappointment. Bha means bhaya, or fear. In material life, one is always in the blazing fire of fear, since no one knows what will happen next. Finally, ma means mrityu, or death. When one attempts to nullify these 5 different statuses of life, pa, bha, ba, bha, and ma, one achieves apavarga, or liberation from the punishment of material existence. The word tirashcham refers to the graded life. Human life, of course, provides an opportunity for the best living conditions. As Western people think, from the monkeys come the human beings, who are more comfortably situated. However, if one does not utilize his human life for svarga, or apavarga, he falls again to the degraded life of animals like dogs and hogs. Therefore, a sane human being must consider whether he will elevate himself to the higher planets, prepare to free himself from the evolutionary process, or travel again through the evolutionary process in higher and lower grades of life. If one works piously, one may be elevated to the higher planetary systems or achieve liberation and return home back to Godhead. But otherwise, one may be degraded to a life as a dog, a hog, and so on. As explained in the Bhagavad Gita, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan, those interested in being elevated to the higher planetary systems, Devaloka, or Svargaloka, must prepare to do so. Similarly, if one wants liberation and wants to return home back to Godhead, he should prepare himself for that purpose. Our Krishna consciousness movement is therefore the highest movement for the benediction of human society, because this movement is teaching people how to go back home, back to Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 13:22, it is clearly stated that different forms of life are obtained by association with the three modes of material nature. Karanam guna sangosya sadasad yuni janmasu. According to one's association with the material qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance in this life, in one's next life, one receives an appropriate body. Modern civilization does not know that because of varied association in material nature. The living entity, although eternal, is placed in different disease conditions known as the many species of life. Modern civilization is unaware of the laws of nature. Yeah. And Prabhupada ends the purport here by quoting a very well known verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the performer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. This is from the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, text 27. Every living entity is under the full control of the stringent laws of material nature, but rascals think themselves independent. Actually, however, they cannot be independent. This is foolishness. A foolish civilization is extremely risky. And therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement is trying to make people aware of their fully dependent condition under the stringent laws of nature, and is trying to save them from being victimized by strong Maya, which is Krishna's external energy. Behind the material laws is the supreme controller, Krishna. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Therefore, if one surrenders unto Krishna, mam evaye prapadyante mayamitam tarantite, one may immediately be freed from the control of external nature. Sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. This should be the aim of life. Yes. So this section is quite, we say, philosophical. And our saintly person will be continuing for probably quite a few more verses. Yeah. This chapter goes till, now we are reading text 26. We're more or less halfway through this particular chapter. The last text will actually be text 46. Yeah. So any thoughts or comments on this? I think we have to at least get one Bengali book. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, please. Can yeah. This question for yeah. By the time Krishna consciousness, still we don't have this concept. Desire that makes somebody we have to go to back to God. This realization still is not, because I am in comfortable zone. But how to develop that desire that fully be Krishna? So you're making the point that even after practicing for many years, we don't seem to, at least you're mentioning for yourself, and I'm sure for others as well, that why is it that we don't, although we are hearing this philosophy practically every day, every time we read Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, how is it that we are not able to develop this level of consciousness? Is this? Yeah. The explanation here is given that as long as one is either in a gross or subtle way connected with the modes of material nature, then that higher consciousness, or that we're talking here, that saintly person is discussing about this very elevated stage of consciousness where one is no longer struggling. So one has to one has to increase one's determination to actually totally become disassociated or disconnected with the modes of material nature. Means one has to increase one's endeavor to practice and to follow the process of Krishna consciousness. Of course, sometimes one may be thinking, and maybe not only thinking, but one may be actually applying nicely, but seemingly is still very slow. So one must know that it is not only due to our effort, personal effort, although that needs to be there, but ultimately it is Krishna. Krishna has to tell the material energy, tell Maya, okay, he's been practicing seriously, sufficiently, now don't bother him. Leave him alone. We are still under the influence of, again, because it is very deep and it is very subtle also. Just like we speak about illicit sex life. Well, there are different levels of illicit sex life. The gross level of actually engaging in sex life, but also the subtle levels, isn't it? Subtle level of wanting to be recognized, honored, one who is seeking position, name, fame, prestige. These are actually subtle forms of sex life. So it goes, the purification, in other words, is something that goes very deeply, and that will only completely happen or take place when we are 100% completely surrendered to Krishna, completely engaged in Krishna's service, completely absorbed, our mind completely absorbed. Uh, uh, and if we are not at that level, then that means that there is still chances for the material energy or the modes of material nature to act on us in different ways. So we should not become in any way discouraged, seeing how you know uh, difficult a job it is actually to completely sever or break away from these modes of material nature, because we have, since time immemorial, we don't really understand what that means, but I mean, since a very, very long time, we have been under the influence of these modes of material nature. And it's only, at least in this lifetime, we don't know what happened in previous lifetime, but most of us, it's like we can have or should have the understanding that for many, many lifetimes we have been engaged in material pursuits. We have been acting on the bodily platform. These are some of the things being explained here by the this Avadut, this saintly Brahmana. We have been struggling with these modes of material nature. We have been struggling with our material mind and our material senses for many, many lifetimes. So now that we have this great fortune in this lifetime to come in contact with devotees, with the process, then we need to be, this is an important instruction given by Srila Rupa Goswami also, we need to be simultaneously very determined and also very patient. So we, most of us don't realize the how severe a disease, just like somebody, it happens a lot, especially in modern day society, because people are not living properly, not eating properly, etc. Somebody happens to go and see a doctor and for a general checkup, and then the doctor detects something and he says, oh, by the way, I have to tell you some very bad news. You have cancer. You have terminal cancer. People find out, I mean, it can happen to any of us at any time, because we have no idea what's going on within this body. We have no idea, no remembrance of our previous past activities that are, we are carrying these seeds of karma, of bad reaction, which sprout at different times. That's explained also in the Nectar Devotion. Some reactions to karma, like this body that we have now, is already ripened, but then there are still unfulfilled desires and different levels. These seeds of material reaction have yet to sprout. So, so we are in general much less aware of our severe disease condition in the material world. That's why it's important to increase our awareness of how of what is our situation in the material world. The more we are aware that, for example, and it's happening a lot these days also, we can leave this body at any moment. We just don't understand that. we don't think about it sufficiently. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that it is those who are intelligent actually meditate on these four primary problems of life: Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, birth, death, old age, and disease. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Dosha, Anudarshanam. Darshanam, one who has, darshanam means to see or to understand, isn't it? Just like tattva darshanam, one who approaches a spiritual master and takes up the process, then he will also be able to see and to understand. So generally, it is due to our not, I mean, when we look and read and hear about the examples of great personalities who have taken very seriously to Krishna consciousness because of their very, it's just like, you know, Raghunath Das Goswami, who although was from a very well-to-do family, rich parents, healthy, good family background, accustomed to all kinds of facilities and opulence because his parents were rich, but his strong desire to become a devotee was fulfilled due to the mercy of Lord Nityananda Prabhu, and finally was able to join Lord Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri. And we know how he gradually, practically within a very short time, became very strict in applying himself in Krishna consciousness. And Lord Chaitanya was very pleased. And in this way, he made very quick advancement and became one of the 6 Goswamis. So we can make spiritual advancement, more spiritual advancement, based on our level of surrender, and also by preventing, you know, what is called not being off guard, means avoiding the different offenses. We recite these 10 offenses every day. If we are not conscious, not sufficiently conscious in applying and following these guidelines, then this will also slow down the process of our, advancing in Krishna consciousness. Of course, it is good to feel or to think that we are not advancing so quickly, and we should have a desire to advance more, to surrender more, and by this type of desire, Krishna will also reciprocate and help us to actually surrender more. All of us, if we look at how we were doing before we joined Krishna consciousness, we have changed, to a different extent. But when we read, of course, different descriptions in the Shastra, and we come to see how, very elevated consciousness, then we find ourselves very much lacking how to come. So these things will, we are all having our individual situation. The basic process is the same for all living entities, and so according to how we endeavor, the more we make the effort to practice Krishna consciousness, then to that extent we will gradually be making progress in the sense. Because we see, not only do we hear about these different descriptions and different advanced devotees, but we see also when we meet different devotees, we see some devotees who are very serious in their practice of Krishna consciousness and who have very nice realizations that they are sharing also. It means that it's something that not only has worked in the past, but even today, one who nicely applies oneself, then those results will be there. We had many wonderful devotees who, some of whom are no longer physically present within our ISKCON society, who did a lot of wonderful service and who became very much empowered and who were able to attract many conditioned souls to Krishna consciousness. I believe today they are celebrating the disappearance of His Holiness Bhakti Siddha Maharaj. Bhakti Siddha Maharaj is one example of someone who, although coming very late to Krishna consciousness, very late means very late to, he met Prabhupada the last year that Prabhupada was performing his pastimes, 1977, right? I mean, some devotees came in contact with Prabhupada like 10 years before that, like 1967. Bhakti Siddha Maharaj came in 1977, but yet, due to Krishna's mercy and Prabhupada's mercy that he received, he was able to accomplish so much, and was always very much appreciated, by his godbrothers, by whoever he came in contact with. This is one of many examples we have within our ISKCON society of individuals who who became very ideal as devotees simply by nicely following the process, the same process, isn't it, of hearing and chanting and all of the other activities that are there. Okay, we close for now. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Pimanandi, Hare Krishna.